Okay. All right, we have 35 participants so far. Um, we have an extra Janine.
That's probably Camille, I'm guessing. I don't know
Okay.
who that is.
Okay. We need to use
I
the.
don't know who that is. That's not me. So
Okay.
I'm sure you can just pull them out because it's not Camille I'm talking to him. So
Okay, it's not you.
right.
Um, Giovanna, could you help us with that, please? Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to get settled, and we'll go ahead and start. Greetings from Chicago. Wonderful.
I think that's one of my members.
Wonderful. This
Hi,
is
Diane.
so excited to see everyone. Okay. Hello from Kentucky. Wow. Dominican Republic. That is so exciting. Wow. This is phenomenal. All right, folks. We're going to give it one more minute and we will go ahead and start. Right. Okay. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this very special fireside chat honoring International Day of Women and Girls in STEM. Well, this every day is a celebration for women and girls in STEM. Not every day we have the incredible opportunity to be joined by three remarkable members of Congress and fearless thought leaders from important nonprofit organizations dedicated to lifting the voices of many women and girls in our nation so that they may feel supported and empowered to succeed throughout their STEM career journey. In today's conversation, we will hear from our panelists as they interview our guest speakers and learn about what makes a difference in increasing representation of women in STEM, how to move the needle on legislative changes, and how to collaborate with Congress on efforts to improve underrepresentation in STEM education in the STEM industry. Before I get started, I want to thank everyone for tuning into this conversation. We have 300 participants and more people keep trickling in. So thank you so much for joining, for taking the time to celebrate a day earlier on this very important date, and to also celebrate Black History Month with all of us. As the conversation progresses, we encourage you to send us your questions in the chat, and we will get to them in the second half of our session. I am your host, Mariana Cunha, Senior Associate of Government Relations of SHPE, the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering Hispanic youth, young professionals, and their families through STEM education access, awareness, and workforce opportunities. Now, let's get started. It is my honor to introduce you to your panelist. Dr. Tiffany Smith, Director of Research and Career Support at AISES, the American Indian Science and Engineering Society. Dr. Tiffany Smith is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma and is also a descendant of the Muskogee Creek Nation. As the Director of Research and Career Support, she manages several grant-supported research-related projects and conducts research related to Indigenous students and professionals in STEM disciplines. She also provides oversight, strategic leadership, management, and overall direction for AISES research and related project as an integral part of the projects department. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Smith. Karen Hording, Executive Director and CEO of the Society of Women Engineers. The Society of Women Engineers is a 41,000 member organization founded in 1950 and is the driving force that establishes engineering as a highly desirable career aspiration for women. With almost 25 years of experience in association management, Ms. Hording joined SWE in March of 2004, serving in a variety of roles. She was appointed to be the executive director and CEO role in December 2013 and oversees many of the society's programs and services, including professional development, K through 12 outreach, the annual conference, and SWE's international expansion. Thank you so much for being here, Karen. And up next, Janine Uzel, Chief Executive Officer of the National Society of Black Engineers. NSBE is the largest Black STEM community impacting society and industry. NSBE was founded in 1975, and as NSBE's first CEO, Janine fearlessly leads the organization to celebrate the 50th anniversary next year, a major milestone and a huge accomplishment. In August of 2002, Janine was appointed to serve in the President Biden's Board of Advisors on HBCUs to aid in its mission to provide the highest quality education to its students and continue serving as an engine of opportunities. Janine's leadership on the Board of Advisors is very timely and adds to the progressive work of NSBE's strategic plan, Game Change 2025. Janine, thank you so much for being here. And I see that we have Congresswoman Garcia.
Hi, y'all.
Thank you so much for being here. So let's go ahead and start. Dr. Smith, Karen, Janine, thank you for being here. And let's go ahead and start with our questions. Dr. Smith, I'll kick it over to you.
Are we introducing ourselves now, Mariana?
Or
are we already having our conversation?
Congresswoman, do you have about 2 minutes so we can go ahead and do brief intros of our panelists?
Sure.
Absolutely. Then great, yes. So as we get settled by the fire, let me go ahead and start by asking you, do a brief intro, just give us a little understanding why the celebration is so important to you, to your organization, and what you look forward to in today's chat.
Widow Mariana, I appreciate the invitation to be here in this space. I think visibility is so important, visibility and representation. So I'm just honored that AISES is able to participate in this way, and looking forward to having a conversation with you today, Congresswoman Garcia. So welcome.
Thank you.
I did want to say Sia Nagata to everyone that's here to visit. Again, the beautiful introduction that Mariana gave really summarizes a lot about me. I serve as the Director of Research and Support at AISES, and I'm Cherokee and Muskogee. And I actually usually am remoting in from what is now known as Blanchard, Oklahoma, which is the southwest part of the state, which sits on the ancestral homelands of the Osage, Comanche, and Wichitan affiliated tribal nations. So it's really important for me to share that place-based context, which is very important. Oklahoma is now home to 39 sovereign tribal nations. And as some people may know, within the United States alone, just our borders, we have 574 federally recognized tribes, 60 plus state recognized tribes, and then there's several that aren't even recognized at all. But they're important to realize whose lands we're on as the first peoples here in the US, but also all of our relatives across our borders, our First Nations relatives and Maori and so many others. So I just wanted to take a moment to recognize that before I get started. But this day, I think, is where, we all work with STEM in some relation, the folks that are on the call. I think it's very important to think about our involvement, because if we were to zoom back, say 50 years ago, we weren't really seeing many women going through the STEM fields and working and contributing in the ways that they are and leading, honestly. And particularly Indigenous women, oftentimes we've been silenced and invisibilized in these spaces. And we're seeing more and more Indigenous women start to trickle into these fields where they see relevance to serving their tribal communities. So it's important, I think, when I think about our importance in our space here, AISES, and serving Indigenous peoples in STEM, all the way from PK through 12 through the workforce, is making sure that there's that support and space, and also recognition of Indigenous knowledge and traditional ecological knowledge from the academy spaces all the way to the workforce. And there's still a lot of work to be done in creating that balance with Western science and STEM. And so I think that's important here. And I don't like to speak from a deficit lens, but I will say in most instances, Indigenous peoples across the board from the data we know are the most underrepresented group within STEM, typically doing anywhere from about 1% in engineering and science fields. That's our graduates for bachelor's degrees. And Indigenous women is even less than. So I think that's why it's so important to celebrate this day and celebrate our contributions that we bring from our many nations and tribes and villages that we represent, that it's so important that we recognize indigeneity in these spaces as well too. So that's what I wanted to share with this group today.
Thank you. We will go ahead and start with Congresswoman in about 3 minutes. Karen and Janine, do you mind giving us a brief intro of yourself and your work?
Sure, I can jump in. Mariana, first of all, thank you to you and SHPE for organizing today's event. I think it's great to bring together the intersectionality of women and girls in this conversation. So thank you so much for that. So as you mentioned, SWE's been around since 1950. So, I'm excited about today because for over 70 years, we've been advocating for women and girls in science and engineering. And, right now we see women are about 13% of the engineering workforce and a little over 20% of the bachelor's degrees. So we still have work to do. So I think to call attention to the great work that's happening in science and engineering, women leading the ways in these fields, highlighting their work, highlighting the importance, particularly for young girls, at an early age, to exposing them to the possibilities of STEM and a STEM career, I think is so important. So to celebrate the day and make sure that those role models are visible to all women and girls wherever they are, even women who may be considering a career change and want to move into the STEM professions, to show them that that's possible. So excited about that. And really looking forward to hearing from our distinguished guests what some of the policies are that our organizations can get behind as we, bring our members to Washington, or as they're out advocating locally within their own areas, so that we can be supportive of those things, because we do know that the federal government plays a very important part in making sure women have that equal access to things like STEM education. Very excited that some of the things like Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, was passed as part of the omnibus, and that the CHIPS and Science Act included some of the things we've been advocating for a number of years. So I think there's some good news to tell, but we still, we know that the numbers are not where they should be. So I think conversations like today help us move the needle.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Mariana, for having me, for having NSBE to be a part of this. It's wonderful to be speaking about the power of women and girls, not just for this International Day, but also because of Black History Month. And so it's just good to be a part of this conversation. As the first CEO at NSBE and also a lifetime member, this day is so important to me, even in my previous roles before coming to NSBE, when I led women and girls in STEM at GE. And we had a chance to participate in days like this on a broader scale. Why this is so critical for us at NSBE is because, as you mentioned earlier, we're going to be 50 years old. So for 50 years, we've been building on our mission to increase the number of culturally responsible Black engineers who excel academically, succeed professionally, and positively impact the community. And NSBE was launched on the heels of the Black Power movement. And what I take away from that is in 1975, when we began, the very same reasons we needed to convene as an organization are the very same reasons we exist today. And so while it is an honor to be turning 50 and to be a part of conversations like this, we must remember that the shoulders that we've been built upon are the same footprints that we leave in the sand today. It's the same fight that we're fighting. It's the same work that we're doing. But we've come such a long way. In fact, at NSBE, 39% of our active collegiate members are women, 36% of our lifetime members are women, 41% of our active NSBE junior members are women, and 40% of our professional members are women. I myself, our chief of programs, our national chair, these are strong women, strong Black women that are living an example for the young women that are a part of our organization, whether they're in the summer engineering programs or a part of our collegiate organization. And so it's critical for us to be a voice, and most importantly, particularly as a Black woman, as a Black community, to be a visible presence. Our young people need to see who they are. They need to see people like us in this space to know what they can be and who they can become. That's why I'm in this role, and that's why our membership is set up as it is. So I'm looking forward to participating in the conversation. I'm glad that NSBE has a seat at this table, and thank you again for being able to be a part of this with Tiffany and Karen and the Congresswoman as well.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Smith, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you. Well, hello, Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia. I'm going to introduce you to our group here before we get started with our conversation. I'm going to share a little bit about your bio. So Congresswoman Garcia is a native of Palito Blanco, a South Texas farming community. Her parents taught her that with hard work and a good education, she could accomplish anything. That is why she has dedicated her life to her community and to public service. As a former social worker and legal aid lawyer, she protected her community's most vulnerable, old and young, and ensured that no one was forgotten. Representative Garcia has broken more than a few glass ceilings. In her time as a Texas state senator representing the 6th district, she became the 7th woman and the 3rd Hispanic woman to ever serve in the Texas state legislature. As a U.S. representative, she became the first Hispanic member of the Houston congressional delegation and one of the first 2 Latinas to represent the state of Texas in the U.S. Congress. Congresswoman Garcia is a member of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the Congressional Historically Black College and University Caucus, both of which unite members interested in increasing access and opportunities for Black and Brown students in STEM, among other priorities. She sponsored the bipartisan and bicameral Advancing Spaceflight Act last Congress, which expresses congressional support for human exploration and habitation in space. And she was also a proud supporter of the CHIPS and Science Act, which became law last year and provided groundbreaking investments in STEM research and development. So please help me welcome Congresswoman Garcia. It's such an honor to be here with you today.
Well, first of all, thank you all for the invitation, and thank you for the wonderful setting, especially now that they've got a screen, y'all, just of the 2 of us side by side, and you can really feel the fireplace in the setting for this fireside chat. I just wish I was there with you in person before by a real fire, because it is a little cold down here in Houston. And for us in Texas, you know, anything below 60 degrees is cold. So I'm that I can't see the fire, but there it is.
There it is.
But it's certainly inviting. But thank you for that, and Karen and Janine and Tiffany, thank you for all the work you do in your groups, and Mariana, thank you for inviting me, and I've been looking forward to it. You know, and there's so much we really could talk about, but I think the underlying tone here of bringing all of us together, and as Karen put it, you know, where we can see the intersectionality of the issues is so important, because often many of our groups kind of focus on the things that matter to our priorities, and everyone is working in different silos. But there, you know, when it comes to women, you know, when you look at the stats in terms of equal pay for equal work, and we know that, women are making only 82 cents for the dollar, that means all of us. That means all of us. Of course, if you break it down, then you see that for Black women, it's 82 cents. For Latinas, it's 54 cents. So it makes you realize that we're all together, but yes, we have some differences. And as you know, Tiffany, it's even worse, 51 cents for Native Americans in our country. So there's a lot of work to do. And so that's generally. Then when you go to STEM, the numbers change even worse because we just don't have representation in the STEM field. And to that end, I can proudly tell you that this has been a focus of mine personally for some time because of our proximity, of course, here in Houston to NASA. I mean, we are the space city. And I've been to several events and work with Rice University when they do their STEM programs and trying to get particularly minority girls to their campus to be there at Rice and be able to see what STEM work is all about and the courses they might have to take just to expose them. So we need more programs like that. And this last year through our project, our community funding project, I was able to get almost $2 million for a project that we are doing with NASA, Houston Independent School District, and Rice University, focused on STEM and girls, and particularly minority girls. And it's that kind of project that needs to be funded, not only in my district, but every district in the country, to make sure that our little girls know about it, are exposed to it, and we need to do it as soon and as early as possible. I don't know, Carrie, you might have an idea of what age is appropriate, but I think even before middle school, we need to start exposing our girls. So that's one good thing I can report. And of course, Karen's already been through some of the great work that we did this last Congress because Democrats deliver. We know this is important for the strong vitality of our country and our economy and for our kids' potential growth. So we did pass the CHIP Act. We passed several bills that included STEM and STEM funding. We passed the Paycheck Fairness Act, which would have dealt with some of the equal pay issues. Of course, it didn't make it through the Senate, but I can assure you it's going to get filed again. And we'll continue to work because Democrats deliver, and I can assure you that Democrats will not be defeated. We will continue on some of these issues to make sure that our little girls get exposed to everything. And I'm just happy to be close enough to NASA to really work with them on some of these issues, and I'll continue to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Garcia. I think in that same vein, as you were talking about these different bills and that sort of thing, I'd actually like to start with asking, how can Congress support closing the current pay equity gap? And as community advocates, how can we shine light on barriers and add momentum to legislative solutions?
Well, as I said earlier, we do that, of course, through legislation. We passed that bill last year. We'll try to pass it again to make sure that we do truly have equal pay for equal work. It is just never right for a woman to get paid less than their counterpart that happens to be male, standing right next to her, doing the same job, doing same stress, same standards. So we got to continue that. And I, for one, and I see my colleague, Chrissy Houlahan is on the screen now. I can assure you that she and I, together with the Democratic Women's Caucus, and we have a very strong caucus, almost, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 strong, that we continue to work on these issues. We work with the White House, especially now, to try to develop and work with them on executive orders that the president can sign when we can't get the legislative action, working with the agencies and the department heads, the cabinet secretaries, to work through administrative things that can be done short of legislation. So we don't give up. We will not be defeated. We'll continue to fight. till women get equal pay for equal work.
Thank you for that. I think I want to kind of pivot a little bit from the political aspect to more of a personal question, as I'm sure we have many advocates here in the room with us today. And then we also probably have students, as well, that are looking for those role models and looking for these opportunities to, break down these barriers. So seeing all these wonderful women right now is very inspiring. And so I would like to hear a little bit more about your career, like throughout it, what has made a difference in your feeling supported and confident in your own success? Because we know for oftentimes, that has to come from an internal space or from mentorship, right? Because there's a lot of systemic things that try to break down our confidence in who we are. And so I'm just curious about your path.
Well, actually, I've always been very shy and quiet. Some people, and I see Chrissy laughing on the other end, but I grew up poor. I grew up poor in South Texas. I'm one of 10 children. I've picked cotton, I've baled hay, I've driven tractors. I mean, I was used to hard, farm work. But my parents knew that they didn't want us to do that for the rest of their lives. So they always focused on making sure, no matter what chores we had to do on the farm, that we got cleaned up and walked down the road to catch the bus to go to school. They focused on education. And I'm pleased to say that when my youngest brother, number 10, graduated from high school, my mother was given a certificate of achievement because we're the largest family in our area where all kids graduated from high school, because that was just an anomaly in South Texas back then. And I'm talking, back in the mid 60s. So I think that still holds today. I think it's education, the foundation of your basic value system and home. And then just a lot of hard work. And I think lots of stuff can be said about me, but no one can say I don't work hard. And in staying focused, in making sure that you've got a support system, as I did with my family, and I do now here with a number of friends. So I think it's about making sure that you stay focused and believing in yourself. When you see yourself in the mirror, are you smiling? Are you happy with what you're doing? Do you know where you're going? Those things are important. So I've always worked hard, stayed focused, and never gave up.
I love that. Thank you for those amazing words of advice
Thank you.
You're sharing with folks, because I think you never know who may be struggling, and it really is helpful to hear your story that folks can relate to, and also how far you've come and what's been a big support for you on that journey.
Thank
so
you.
I just appreciate, our time went by way too fast, but
It always does. It always does.
But Waddell, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. And I regret that I won't be able to stay. I wanted to say hello to my colleague, Chrissy Houlahan, and she and I served on Armed Services Committee last session. Regrettably, I'm not on that committee this year, but I know that she and I will continue to do some work together. So
yeah, it's nice to see you, Sylvia.
And have a great weekend, and happy Valentine's Day to everybody.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was wonderful. Congresswoman Houlahan, welcome. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
And Karen,
can you hear me okay?
Perfect. Karen, I'll kick it over to you.
Great. Well, I am honored to introduce Congresswoman Chrissy Houlahan. Congresswoman Houlahan is an Air Force veteran, an engineer, yay engineering, an entrepreneur and educator who is continuing her career of service as the first woman ever to represent Pennsylvania's 6th District in Congress. She earned her engineering degree from Stanford with an ROTC scholarship that launched her service in the U.S. Air Force and Air Force Reserves, and later she earned her MS in Technology and Policy from MIT. As a STEM professional herself, Chrissy is concerned about building the pipeline of tech talent to support our national defense. She led the charge to improve the Department of Defense's recruitment and retention of tech talent, a skill set we need to address emerging threats like cybersecurity through the bipartisan Armed Forces Digital Advantage Act, which was enacted in 2019. Congresswoman Houlahan is a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, a group of senators and representatives equally split between Democrats and Republicans who try to find common ground on the issues facing our nation. As part of her effort to empower women and girls, Chrissy founded 2 new groups in Congress, the Service Women and Women Veterans Caucus and the Women in STEM Caucus. Both groups have bipartisan support and have become platforms for like-minded members to work on these issues. In addition, she is a longtime friend of the Society of Women Engineers and was the original sponsor for our STEM Restart Act in the House. So welcome, Congresswoman Houlahan. It is so great to see you again.
It's good to be here. Thank you so much for having me today. And happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday. Well, I think we'll jump in kind of with a policy question for you. We know that innovation is key to the U.S. economy. What policy do you believe can have the greatest impact in terms of expanding STEM participation for women and girls?
You know, I think about this a lot, and I get myself wrapped around the axle on the right answer to that question, because I think it's too broad to answer with one particular policy. And I'll start with the fact that I used to be a high school chemistry teacher. And I experienced in the classroom, which was a population, my kids were 11th graders who were about 99% Black, and all of them on free and reduced lunch. And they all struggled mightily with reading, kind of 3rd and 4th grade reading level. And so when we're talking about, enhancing and increasing the number of people who go into technical backgrounds or STEM and STEAM fields, it's a bunch of things, right? Starting from babies, starting from being able to have the pre-K skills and early childhood literacy skills that people need to be able to thrive, and then having the skills to be able to learn things like high school chemistry, and then having the mentorship programs that allow them to be able to see themselves, in the educators that are bringing them up throughout the whole system, which frankly, they didn't see themselves in me. So some of the some of the policies that we can work on involve all of those things, whether it's early childhood literacy, whether it's, programs and curricula for kids who are K through 12, whether it's making sure that educators look like the kids who are educating them. Those are some of the things. And then, as you mentioned the STEM Restart Act. There's also an issue with once you get somebody through the pipeline, somebody like me or other people, it's hard to stay there. It's hard to stick in the workforce when you've got a lot of other things pulling on you. Many of us are being pulled by family issues, having children and making sure that we can stay in the workforce and keep our skills relevant are really important. And you mentioned the STEM Restart Act as being one of those ways that we can talk about returnships. That's kind of like not an internship, where you go when you're a relatively speaking young person or new at something, but rather when you're kind of resetting and coming back into the economy for one purpose or another. And we really have an issue with that right now because of how many people we lost in the workforce to COVID issues. And so those are some of the things that could be done. And that's why I get kind of spun up about there's just not one thing, it's everything.
Yeah, there's no silver bullet. We need to be doing a lot of things at the same time.
Yeah.
Let me just, before we pivot to a little bit of a personal question, I just wanted to ask a little bit about the Women in STEM Caucus and kind of goals for that, maybe even just in the short term.
Sure. And what's kind of interesting / tragic is that there was never a Women in STEM Caucus before several years ago when we started it. And, the country's been around for half a minute, and there have been women on the planet pretty much since the beginning of time, depending on how you think of things. And the fact that we've never been focused on 51% of the population and the ways that we can contribute to the economy, particularly in those things that are most in demand in our economy right now, STEM and STEAM skills, is pretty interesting that our Congress didn't have that focus. And so by starting the STEM and STEAM Caucus, we were creating a sense of gravity, kind of a place people both parties to be able to And so we also, when you create a caucus, it's not just the members who are part of it, but just as importantly, and probably more importantly, their teams are part of that. You know, their staff members and all of the interest groups that orbit around, you know, places like Congress are also part of that. And so we're able to sort of create that workspace and that mind space for us to be able to think about legislative issues as we've been talking about, but just as importantly, just sort of mindset issues and making sure that we create the validity of talking about this issue at places like the halls of Congress. So, you know, our short-term goals are to create a meeting space, a center of gravity for people. Our longer-term goals are, of course, to achieve parity and equity in the workplace in issues like STEM and STEAM. And as importantly, and kind of, again, tragically, when I started the STEM and STEAM caucus, I had to fight about what we were calling it. People really wanted to call it the Women in STEM Caucus, and I really wanted to make sure that we included STEAM. And I also really wanted to include more than just women, but all kinds of communities that are not necessarily in the majority in those kinds of places where STEM and STEAM are being done. And we decided to kind of take a baby step and call it the Women in STEM Caucus, because not everybody understood all the other things and complicated issues that were surrounding this particular issue.
Well, thank you for that. I know at SWE, we are very interested in working with the caucus in the House, and I know there's one in the Senate as well. So anything that we can do to support those activities, we are here to help. And now sort of shifting out of the kind of the political side and the policy side of things, and maybe a little bit more of a personal focus. Can you tell us who you look up to and why?
A bunch of people. I look up to, it was interesting to hear Sylvia talk about her family and the importance of education. I absolutely look up to my family, and my father was a refugee and came here after surviving World War II as a Holocaust survivor. And he emphasized the importance of education so much as being the only thing that couldn't be taken away from you when everything else goes bad. My mother is a remarkable woman. She's probably, of all the people in my immediate family, the brightest, most educated, and most capable of all of us. She's the one who sat by me and taught herself all the calculus classes and all the chemistry classes, and then sat with me and helped me with my homework when I was in high school. And so I admire her very much. And then I admire people who I don't know or never got to know, like Sally Ride as an example. She was always sort of a role model to me as somebody who kind of paved a path that I could look to and see and hope to be. And then lastly, and absurdly, Indiana Jones is one of my, childhood heroes, and still is one, because I just think that he, in that fictional character, was really capable of imagining not just an academic life, but also a life of adventure where those things were combined. So that's why I admire his character.
Great. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Karen, I think we received a question in the chat. Is how can community activists can get the Women in STEM Caucus involved in their work, and how we can provide feedback, etc., and really engage in a lot of collaboration to move the needle forward on equity and all the issues that and matters that are involved within that word, equity.
So I'm not certain if one of my team members is on this Zoom, and if they are, they can, I'm sure, drop in the chat a way to get in touch with our office. There are actually 4 co-chairs of the Women in STEM and STEAM Caucus, 2 Republican women and 2 Republican men. It looks like Emma's on, so she's going to go ahead and drop in the chat how to get in touch with her. And we welcome, any insight, any ideas, any ways that we can be useful to you as a group, and that you can be useful for us as well. Hi, Emma.
Well, one last question of one of our participants is, I'm 16 and from a small county in Montenegro. Can you tell me, is Tech Girl a good choice?
Is what?
I believe that is going into tech a good choice.
Into tech?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, what I would say to you is, even if for whatever reason you end up not being in tech, so to speak, directly. The skills that you learn by educating your mind in that way, I think are some of the life skills that allow you to do all kinds of things really well. I'm a member of Congress, right? And in Congress, there are 435 of us, and only a couple dozen of us have tech backgrounds. And I'm asked all the time to think about things with a technical angle and with a technical mind and with sort of the logical processes that I learned as a young woman in school. And I don't do, I don't do chemistry anymore. I don't, do coding anymore. I don't do any of those kinds of things every day, but you can bet I'm using those skills and drawing on them all the time. So I would say 100% it's worth your time. The other thing I would say is, and don't be so hard on yourself. I have 3 girls who are now in their late 20s and early 30s, and really try hard to raise them up to understand that if you try something, it doesn't mean that you're not good at it if you don't get an A on it. If you don't get 100%, if you're not perfect, that's okay. It's actually better than okay. Keep doing it, because that's one of the things that I think women in particular and girls in particular really hold themselves to much higher standards than they should, and decide that they're bad at things much more quickly than they ought to.
Yep. I just want to
Trust me, I got a lot of C's.
Yeah. I just want to underline exclamation point the Congresswoman's comments. With a tech background, you can do anything you want. There, just about every field is looking for people with those technical skills. So keep at it. It's limitless.
100%.
Well, Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
This has been incredible. I'm glad you enjoyed the fire. Next time we'll
thank you for inviting me to the fire.
Coffee.
I am repping though. I'm wearing my Eagles green because it is the Super Bowl weekend, and I am going to say, for those out there who celebrate, go Birds.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Wow. Well, that was incredible. And we have a couple of minutes until Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee join us. But, we've been getting great questions on our chat. Unsure if you taken a look at them, and we'll get to them absolutely towards the end. But one of them is really not only exposing women and young girls to STEM from an early age, but also supporting their mental health as they navigate being a minority in the field. And so I thought that was an incredible question that I hope we get to answer in a little bit. But before we start, what are your thoughts? Because I'm sure that we have several thoughts about this.
Yeah, I'll just jump in that I think the organizations represented here today can play a really vital role. We're all about community. We're all about support, helping each other. Yes, the technical skills are important, but we know that the network, the community, the other things that you need to be successful, all of our organizations provide. So I would encourage, whether you are just starting out in STEM and studying STEM, or you're already well into your career, to consider being part of one or more of our organizations, because I think it's just so important to have that community that understands the work you do and the challenges you're facing, and can be there to be that safety net, if you will.
I think what I would add to that is the relevance of keeping STEM exciting and fun for young girls. We lose their interest right around the time when they think that being called nerdy is not a cool thing, right? And so that transition into that strong interest when they're in like maybe the 3rd and 4th grade, we spend a lot of that time and reminding them that they can do hard things and they're smart and they can do it, right? So we're building that confidence and that courage. And then something happens in that 5th and 6th grade, and it's, and social media is playing a big part of that. And it's just pulling them away from that interest in wanting to be a part of it. And so leveraging social media, which is certainly something that we're introducing. We've hired a director of Marcom, and we're building this team in NSBE so that we can position, STEM and make it relevant and exciting and fun in our community. We have to use social media and find other ways to speak to this community so that we capture their attention. And then I think when we do that, if we can get them into school and studying this space, it's also particularly in diverse communities like Black communities, the help that's required or necessary for us to fund an engineering education. It's so expensive. And so many of our students are challenged with being able to financially pay for that, or when they finish their degree, the level of debt is so intense. And so the next part of that is how do we help support that? And then finally, when you graduate and you're having these opportunities to get these great job experiences, what is happening in the workforce, and why aren't we staying? Why are we leaving the workforce in droves? Why are we representing such a small part of this community? And we certainly know that there's so many topics and ways that we need to speak to what it means to be Black in STEM, what happens from a DEI perspective, and what we're experiencing. And so that is a whole entire ocean to try and boil. And I think we just have to take it, bit by bit. And those are some of the things that all of us are working on, which is why every one of these organizations are tackling them both for our individual close communities and then for the broader communities as well. Because when we solve this for women, when we solve this for other cultures, we're solving it on a broader level. So we may be working in our independent respective groups, but the problems that we're solving are pulling us all closer together and helping change perspective in a major way.
I would add to that too, those wonderful responses that I feel like covered a lot of the challenges that particularly women of color face. And I would say a lot of that too is to normalize mental health challenges. It's by talking about it like we're doing today. That I think with this month of Valentine's Day and all of that, I think it's important to think about self-love and always prioritizing your well-being and health. And oftentimes, particularly for, say, collegiate students, there's counseling services. So take advantage of those opportunities that are right on your campus to seek that help that you need to talk with someone, but also think about that full circle of support, I would say. So as we've been talking about today, finding someone that's championing you. I just think that champion, it goes beyond even mentorship. It's someone that's really going to pull you up with them and cheer you along and help you seek those opportunities for yourself as well. And when you're, running into challenges with, am I meant to be here because there's nobody like me in my classroom, or who thinks like me, for instance, when I think about Indigenous students too, and bringing our own knowledges that aren't talked about in the classroom across most non-Native serving institutions, that it's super challenging. And that sense of belonging and finding your own scholar identity within these STEM spaces, seeing yourself as a scientist, as an engineer, or scholar, that's very important. Seek out those champions that are going to help you find those opportunities. Particularly those outside of school opportunities too, but take care of you. Taking care of you before you can do any of these other things is the foremost important thing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And one of the things that we keep hearing is the need of role models and how seeing yourself in that space is so important. And wherever it is in all STEM disciplines, how important it is to really have those that visibility, as well as from an early age see that you can achieve it. And so it really speaks volumes and moves mountains. And it's so great to hear from not only from Congresswoman Houlahan, and also Congresswoman Garcia, but hearing it from you, and also from everyone that is joining us and dropping that sense of importance in the chat. So it's absolutely great. I would love to hear what is something incredible that you've seen in the effect of role models.
Yeah, I think just, some of the work that SWE does, where we're engaging with young girls and helping them build their confidence And just the fact that they can see women in these roles and understand, wow, that's something I can do. That's somebody who looks like me and they have this amazing career. Maybe they're working on an offshore oil rig, or they're working on some, life-saving medical device, or making sure, the cars we ride in are safe and have safety devices built for women's bodies. I think it's so important for them to see. I mean, I don't know of another 4-year degree where you can have such a positive impact on the world and a pretty lucrative career. So I think it's just, you never know. I always tell someone, you never know what conversation you might have that will be the spark for someone else. So for those of you that, maybe you're just a student right now in university, or you're early in your career, don't sell yourself short in the impact that you can have on somebody's life to show them a path they may not have thought of. We can all be role models and mentors.
I think that, Karen, I will plus one everything that you say. It is the most game-changing experience in a girl's life when she can see someone that looks like her doing something that she didn't even imagine she can do. And I would venture to say that all 4 of us on this screen right now are probably the result of that as well, right? And it's absolutely imperative, and this is why we can't keep our stories to ourselves or our experiences. We have a summer engineering experience for kids. It's a 3-week program that's funded by our sponsors. And it's an opportunity for us to bring students from grades 3 through 5 to learn how to do some really cool stuff, from coding and programming to drones and flying them. And it's just a great experience, particularly if you can't afford to learn STEM in that space. And even when we were virtual in the past 2 summers, we had thousands of kids. But what was important, all of it is critical, but one of the things that was uniquely done with girls specifically was a partnership that we did with Tech Bridge Girls, and not trying to go it alone, but go stronger together. And so instead of trying to build out a stronger platform for girls on our own, we partnered with a group that already had that platform. Tech Bridge Girls is a community of girls that are already working in STEM, combining our curriculums and focusing on ways that we could teach things like empathy and social justice in engineering and in technology is what we were able to focus on. And so you're able to peel back this onion another layer and say, what specifically can we teach girls, and what can we specifically do to hold on to their interest? We're all a part of that. And so it's just an example of a program that NSBE's done. And I think this stems even to some of the questions I see in the chat around how the universities and other organizations, or whether it's employee resource groups, how they play a role. I think they all play a critical role, whether you're working in the workspace or you're a part of a women's chapter of SWE or NSBE or other in your school. This is where you're starting to build the courage and the confidence to be able to be that role model to others.
I think it's so important too that we have diverse faculty, making sure that women and other underrepresented groups are part of our university classrooms in terms of teaching. I think now we have 90 women deans of engineering, which is, a huge jump from what we saw when we first started to monitor those numbers. But, we still know that the faculty is not as diverse as it needs to be. So that's an area where we need to focus as well.
I echo those same sentiments, both Janine and Karen have mentioned, and actually to your point, Karen, of the more diverse faculty, some of the things that AISES has been doing around that. We have one of our signature premier programs is called Lighting the Pathway to STEM faculty careers for Indigenous folks. So, I mean, we start from the undergrad, as low as the undergrad, all the way through postdocs and current faculty. And we do single matching. So that mentor matching, seeing folks like you in those fields, again, that we've said over and over, is so imperative to their success and how they've navigated the academy spaces that were not created for us,
No.
Nor do they serve us in any way. And we have to work 4 times as hard to get to where we need to be, and even more so in STEM fields where we're highly underrepresented. And I would say being realistic about changing the workforce too, because yes, we can get these great students in there and finished, but then they see how tough it is in the workforce, that they're still not finding their community and space and support. And that was to Janine's point about the ERGs, like that's one step, right, that we can do. And I think a lot of organizations and companies can do to create more of those opportunities to not only recognize a part of my identity that's really important, but also to then support my advancement in these fields and to keep me as a valued member of the team. And unfortunately, too often we're seeing women exit once they're in the workplace. So I think there's still so much to be done in those workspaces. We're spending a lot of time, I think, on college support and PK through 12, but then what about once they're professionals out there, and how do we make, keep them there, right? And so I think that's something that really needs to change.
Yeah, I think for all our organizations, I know we do a lot of work with employers around climate and culture. And really helping them understand what are the biases and how do we interrupt those biases to really change the culture.
Absolutely.
One of the things I can certainly share from my previous role is that we were finding that women were leaving engineering for several reasons. Certainly, particularly if you're on the manufacturing product side, you're drawing away when it's time to start a family. We're finding that less women wanted to do some of the shifts or the dangerous work. Those aren't the most comfortable environments. We also found that many of these manufacturing facilities hadn't done upgrades since the 70s. So there were no rooms for breastfeeding or for privacy. I mean, they just weren't set up for a modern day woman in that space. They didn't have female restrooms. And so that was always a big problem. We also found, that the promotion factor was so much more limited for us in the STEM space. And that is just an unrealistic acceptability, particularly when we're making up more than half of the workforce. And I think, as we stated earlier, standing side by side, doing the same work, not the Congresswoman mentioned, not making the same money and not being rewarded in the same way. We're not receiving the same pay when it comes to the patent dollars that we can receive when we're in the room for patents that are being designed. There's a financial increase that goes along with having your name on a patent. These are all reasons that we're exiting this space, but they're all things that we could change immediately so that we stay active. And so continuing to push that when we're in this workplace, continuing to ensure that we hire women to be the CTOs and the heads of these engineering product divisions, to be the CEOs of these tech companies, and to put them in positions of power and budget so that they're able to hire and promote and reward other women. That is how we're going to make that change. And when we see, we continue to put our foot down to do more of that, then that's going to begin to show some different results. Also, when you tie this to the bonus structure for leadership, then we'll see it happen very differently, right, Karen?
Yes, it has to be part of how senior leadership is compensated.
I think it's exciting just to see right now who we have on the call of two major professional associations, NSBE and SWE. And then we also, Sarah Echohawk over AISES, that's our AISES president, just seeing these women in these leadership roles is already, that great representation, and shows you how great of an impact we can have in these spaces, because we're relating to what 51% as we listen to of the population. So it's very, very important for folks' pathways. And I love all the comments in the chat. I'm trying to keep up with a lot of these, that people are sharing programs and really cool ideas. So thanks, everyone.
A little shout out to Sarah. I know she was doing a big talk today in Cleveland. So I hope that's
going. We're missing her.
Oh, I'm sure she's rocking it. Definitely missing her.
So we just got a note from Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee. She's running a few minutes behind, so we'll keep our eyes peeled for her joining, but let's just go ahead and answer a few questions, just because it's all the questions, as everyone has mentioned, they're so energized, they're so on point, and really they connect, they really bring that need that we see in each of our organization's memberships. And for us, connecting that question into the goal of our positions in leadership and our relationships with members of Congress is to bridge that gap. Not only bridge that gap legislatively, but also as the being in that nexus of academia, private sector, government. And so it's incredible. And I think this question will really be a thought-provoking question, and is how can people in leadership roles can create inclusive and fearless organizations for women that which has always been a challenge, or even a space for to be inclusive for women.
Well, I think sponsorship is really important. I mean, we talked a lot about mentoring and role models, but we know that, you know, sponsors play an important role. So who is talking about you when you're not in the room? Who is making sure that, you know, women are being considered for the next level of roles? Who is making sure that women are part of the slate when looking at, you know, the very senior leadership? You know, what kind of development pathways are there for women, and really making sure that there are those sponsors and champions, and that often has to start at the top. So, you know, making sure that there is that commitment for women of color, to be part of that entire pathway, and make sure that they have the things they need to be successful, and then ultimately be considered for those roles.
I think that was a perfect response. And Karen, and I think I would just add, I mean, really simply put resources toward these efforts, you know, and in several different ways. When you want to create a more inclusive organization, I mean, that requires resources, both financial, human, right? Like all of it. And so I think just making sure that there's that support too, in the sense of, I've seen a lot of organizations adding, let's say, like a diversity officer, or someone that helps in the HR aspect too, with issues that may arise, right? So I think that's important to have within an organization, in addition to the ERGs, and that full circle again of support that does come from the top down. I agree, Karen, that has to come from the leadership putting in these efforts to create an inclusive organization. So that could be having a consultant come work with your organization to help make, you know, this work within the structure of what they have, and maybe rethinking the structure even. So I think we have to take that time to really pause and reflect before just always getting in the busyness of the day-to-day. And so that takes a lot of thought leadership and time and resources to get there.
Yeah. And men need to be our partners in this. We need to work on it together. We can't do it alone.
Yes, I completely agree. Having allies in every space and every corner is absolutely important, where we don't have a seat at the table, and important conversations are made about everything from our future being, our current being, to our future being. So we see that Congresswoman Jackson Lee's chief of staff is joining us, and the Congresswoman will be joining in just a few. Until then, let's see if there's another question that we can answer. And if you have one that you've seen that you want to pop up, that would be great. Let's see. Okay, I think, let's see. All right, there was one question about connecting organizations to grants and opportunities, as well as Secretary Cadona. I know that his staff, his outreach staff, is very diligent in connecting with community members. And for members of Congress, you can reach out to find your representative, and their main and direct number is usually their staff in Washington, D.C. Or if you need to set a separate conversation in the district or the state, that is also available. Let's see. Okay. Yep, perfect. Thank you, Alejandra, for adding that. Yes, just simple as that. Add your zip code information, if residence information if needed, to find the specific one, and then you can dial their office. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
For those of you that do not know Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, she's an influential and forceful voice in Washington, D.C. She is currently the Democratic Chief Deputy Whip in the U.S. House of Representatives and is serving her 14th term representing the 18th Congressional District of Texas, the energy capital of the world. She is considered by many as the voice of reason, dedicated to upholding the constitutional rights of all people. As a supporter of affirming the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment that took a critical step toward enshrining equality for women in the United States Constitution, Congresswoman Jackson Lee is an advocate for equality for all women. Representative Jackson Lee is the author and fighter for the passage of the Violence Against Women's Act, which was signed by the president for the first time almost a decade ago. She's also the founder, member, and chair of the Congressional Children's Caucus, a member in leadership of the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional Caucus for Women's Issues, where she serves as co-chair for the Task Force on Women of Color. Representative Jackson Lee is a big supporter of increasing diversity in STEM programs, especially those with early exposure, those that are culturally relevant, and those that promote emerging technologies such as cybersecurity to attract creativity while encouraging higher participation. It is my hope that she'll be able to join us very soon.
Hey, I haven't seen anything, but we got a really good question. As CEOs and executive officers of diversity, inclusion, and nonprofits, what advice do you have regarding leading in your positions?
Do you want me to take that, or?
Janine,
Yeah.
you can jump in.
Sure. Can you read the question again? I don't see it in the chat. I want to make sure I hear it.
Yeah, as CEOs, executive officers of your organizations, as well as leaders in diversity and inclusion, what advice do you have regarding leading in your positions? I believe that is like to promote space.
I think my first advice is broad shoulders and tough skin, right? Learned that after getting my feelings hurt a lot of times, because once you're in this position, you're certainly not coming in with the mindset that you have anything to prove, because you've worked and you've gotten yourself here. And so your humility, your hard work, your problem solving, all of the work that you've done. But what you may not be prepared for is just the hard knocks that come along with having to lead and be responsible for so much, for so many decisions, for so many people, constantly trying to feel like you have to appease and applaud everyone, still being maybe treated in a way that could be inappropriate as a woman, referred to as gal, or some of the different ways that we're often spoken to by male counterparts, and just not being valued for the strength and what you bring as a critical thinker, a technology thinker, a leader in so many other ways. Those things require broad shoulders, because they do begin to chip away at the source of who you are as a human being, which is why when Dr. Smith mentioned self-care and taking care of oneself, it's become a very cliche way to state. I mean, I'm not making light of it, but everyone's like, self-care. But the thing is, we don't do it, which is why we keep saying it, right? It's because we're not licking our own wounds. We're not lifting our own arms up, and we're not asking for help. We're just head down, busy, doing it every single day. And that in and of itself is exhausting. And so to not then surround yourself with a community of people, friends, family, others, however you find your support, it will start to drain on you. And unfortunately, as women of color, as women of various backgrounds, the world doesn't have the same grace on us when we slip, make a mistake, or transition. And so that care is so important. And to me, I find that to be the harder work as a CEO than I do the actual budget and strategic work. I feel like we've been doing that for years, and we can do it. We can think it through. We get good thought partners, and we build things, and it's great. But what it takes to actually do that every day, 2 feet on the floor, standing up, getting in front of there, wanting to create spaces that are equitable, spaces that are fair, trying to show that you care about the needs of others, those are challenges. And here is a woman that has been doing that for sure, and is yet here with us today.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How important you all are. I've tried to get every way to get on to this wonderful program. I won't be able to stay on long, but I did want to greet the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers and wish you a happy International Day of Women and Girls in Science. I chair the Congressional Children's Caucus. Maybe it looks like we have.
There you are. We see you.
How are you?
Hello. How are you?
You can see me. It's been a little difficult.
That is
And
great.
I didn't want the day to end. So I want to thank the Hispanic Professional Engineers and thank you for your work. It's Happy International Women's Day. Thank you for that. And as well to just give a few thoughts and then you may have a question. Let me congratulate all of the women that are engaged. And I know that you had a number of outstanding members of Congress. I want to congratulate them as well. And they are stalwarts in working on these issues. I happen to have been on the Science Committee for a good number of years and was very proud to be on the Science Committee as we were building. So it shows how long ago it was as we were building the International Space Station. So I take great pride in being the ranking member on the Space and Aeronautics Subcommittee and being concerned with diversity in space, if you will. I've worked on diversifying the astronaut corps for women and minorities, and I think we have done a unique job in the last couple of years of getting more minority astronauts and women, including Hispanics. And so I am clearly excited about that. But I have seen the value of STEM education. And in 2017, I was awarded the Executive Women's Forum Women in Cybersecurity Leadership Award for the work that I've done both in STEM, but also specifically in cybersecurity, which is something that I'm enormously concerned about. And isn't it interesting for those who are listening, don't ever think the STEM will not carry you in places you would not expect or suspect, because who would suspect a spy balloon that was characterized as a weather balloon? And so we have been, as members of Congress, engaged over the last couple of days on what this is in classified briefings, of which details I can't give of that, but I can give the visual of what we all saw and what was represented to us and what is going on now with the FBI trying to gather as much of the remaining technology as possible. Who will they need going forward for these kinds of challenges to America's national security and to America's own progress? They will need science, technology, engineering, and math. And for anyone to think that that is not an exciting pathway, a spy balloon that is the size of 3 school buses, I believe, and enormously tall, and the scientists that will need to discern just what went on. So as it relates to the United States Congress, we are clearly committed to funding more STEM education, diversifying how it is being taught. And I also think it is important to have a practical component that when you teach children STEM, you should have a practical component, whether they're in the 1st grade or whether they're in the 12th grade. That always makes a difference. So in Houston, for example, we have the Space Museum connected to NASA. So not only do you have a museum, but there are public tours of NASA now that the pandemic is over. I brought presidents there to see the space station's configuration, some of the early models of the rockets that were utilized. We're now moving away from the rocket that we've used for the last 20 years plus to something called the Orion, which is a new technology. And this gets people excited, young girls, I hope, about what you can do in science, technology, engineering, and math. It is not just the numbers, but it is the practicality of it. And I think in teaching it, we have to show them how it can be a practical part of their life and how exciting it is. I'll finish on this. I have many more things to say, but I'll finish on this very briefly. And that is to say that the idea of the practical aspect is to get people to know that you can save lives and do great things in the midst of science, technology, engineering, and math. So I thank you so very much. And I know that you had a question or two, and I'll just pause for a moment. I just wanted to give those opening thoughts, and I'll pause for a moment.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. My name is Janine Uzel. I am the CEO for the National Society of Black Engineers. And I'm going to ask you a question today. I know you have quite a bit going on and you'll need to transition from here, but I thought we could pose one question to you. You have 3 women that are leading and working in critical groups today. I'm sorry, 4 of us, Mariana, Dr. Smith, Karen, and myself, that are representing a number of engineering organizations and women in STEM. I'm wondering if you can talk to us about what steps Congress can take to make progress in advancing and improving STEM education access, and how can organizations like NSBE and the others that are represented here today support Congress more specifically in this area? So I think we'll ask that question and then we'll let you go for the day.
Well, first of all, thank you for making sure that I appropriately said the members of the Black engineers, and to make sure that I take note of that. And very glad to ensure of the vast experience that you have in this area. So let me stand corrected to embrace both the Black women engineers and the Hispanic women engineers. But Congress needs to be a partner in this. I always think Congress works better when we are guided by those who are experts in the area. I've already indicated that my view of teaching science, technology, engineering, and math is clearly to give the practical connection, and that means for children, for high school students, and for college. So one of the things that I did early on was when I was the ranking member on the Space and Aeronautics, I indicated that what the federal government throws away is precious to schools. So one of the things that we can do is, as we work with our laboratories, as we update our laboratories, not that we're giving away unusable items, but technology in our science labs that we have that come under NASA. Some of those items can be utilized, and I passed a law in the nation's schools. And so there's a practical connection in the lab to real technology in certain areas. We have labs across the nation, science labs, one in New Mexico, one in California. Alabama has a space lab as well, of course, Johnson, and then other labs, to be able to use some of that equipment for our school labs that they would never be able to access. Then, of course, the CHIPS program, and that was an enormous coming together of experts like yourself. That is going to be enormous funding in developing a new infrastructure of workforce dealing with chip manufacturing. That's practical, where someone who has been taught in science, technology, engineering, math can be part of us building the new chips industry. And I offered an amendment to that focused on the STEM gaps that exist between K-12 students attending schools in different geographic regions who come from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. I offered that amendment to the Competes Act, which was to make sure that STEM was taught or there was access to STEM in those hard to reach or those diverse communities, like the communities that I have as well. I have supported the Women and Minorities in STEM Booster Act of 2021 that required the National Science Foundation to award competitive grants to help increase the participation of women and underrepresented minorities in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I co-sponsored the HR 5893, 21st Century STEM for Girls and Underrepresented Minorities, which would have directed the Department of Education to make grants to local education agencies to pay the cost of early carrying out STEM education for girls and underrepresented minorities. I don't want to give I have a long list, but what I think I want to emphasize is that the organization can become a partner with the U.S. Department of Energy. There are grants there that are really focused on STEM, even in the U.S. Department of Energy. It just takes the organization looking and being a 501c3 and designing a program that they would find attractive under their grant program. The same thing with the U.S. Department of Education. There are STEM related programs there. The U.S. Department of Commerce deals with census. Those are numbers, that's counting the census. It deals with statistics that would have grants dealing with particular subsets of what you as engineers will be working on. So it is a matter of their state government. I happen to be biased toward the federal government, and I know it may be a long journey on trying to weave your way in, but the grant process is accessible under the departments and keep up with, for example, the CHIPS bill that is passed, the Competes Act, 2 bills that really focus on getting a new workforce around science, technology, engineering, and math. And with that in mind, even if you get 1 grant, it's going to make a difference. I also think it's important to find some of the corporations that are science focused, from Google to Microsoft to Boeing, and to find ways that these corporations in their programmatic giving can give to organizations who are focused on science, technology, engineering, and math, because there is no doubt that the workforce is slimming down, and you've got to build up a new generation of people who lust after science and lust after technology and want to do it just like you've done. In my program, a Christmas party, if you can imagine, I make sure NASA is at my big annual Christmas party that has up to 15,000, 25,000 children. And they bring their largest apparatus that they can possibly bring. Last year, we had the head of NASA, Johnson, and we have astronauts. And it just excites children about the practical aspect of science. Just like we bring fire trucks and police cars, people don't think that that's science, but it is. And it's the practical aspect of them staying in school and focusing on science, technology, engineering, and math. And then the last year we had the Legos. And if there isn't anything that is science, technology, engineering, math, just get a big Legos exhibit, which we have, which is absolutely unbelievable. So you can find ways that your organization can partnership and turn the numbers into the excitement of the practicality of how exciting it will be to know both of those elements. So thank you so very much. We can get the job done by pushing them out and let them try the water, if you will. When they try the water, I think they're going to have a good time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you so much for your time, Mariana. I yield and turn back to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. And thank you so much for everyone that is staying on. Have a wonderful weekend. And thank you so much for joining. To my panelists, Dr. Smith from AISES, Karen Horton from SWE, and Janine Uzel from NSBE, and Congresswoman, everyone that had joined us. Thank you very much and have a wonderful weekend.
Before you go,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to
Yes,
make sure
ma'am.
that you know that I have this special guest here. Come around and show your face. Commissioner Rebecca Clay Flores, and she's out of Bexar County. Oh, there she is.
Hi.
So she's listening, and I guess she's going to open up a lot of STEM programs in Bexar County, which is San Antonio. Okay.
Looking
Fantastic.
forward to that.
Thank you for your
Yeah.
work.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for having us.
Get out there
Mariana.
and get those grants. I need you all to get those grants. All right.
Sure
You know
will.
it. We're on it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.